Hello everybody, welcome in. Today we're going to be talking about covert abuse and coercive control and what the difference is between covert abuse and overt abuse. And that may not be immediately obvious because covert abuse is covert. I've been working in this area for the past 13 years. And I have served over 1,400 women now. More and more keep reaching out to us. And they say over and over again, I've exhausted our local resources here. Can you please help me? It's not the typical kind of abuse that most domestic violence agencies are set up to handle. Physical and sexual abuse. These are the tools of the trade for the regular abuser. But we're talking about a set of people that lie at the far end of the bell curve when it comes to moral compass, integrity, honesty, the ability or willingness to do self-reflection, to feel empathy, to feel remorse. We're talking about people who lie easily and often even when they don't need to. So, if any of those characteristics fit the profile of the person that has hurt you, then welcome in, because we're going to talk about what it looks like today in a little more detail. So I'm Ruth Darlene. I'm founder and Executive Director of Women of Silicon Valley, WomenSV, and we're all about empowering survivors, and educating the public, and training providers to recognize the lethality risk of covert abuse and coercive control, ways to recognize it, and what to do about it. So, shall we begin? What is domestic violence? What do we normally think about when we think about domestic violence? Depending on the administration, and keep an eye on the Department of Justice and how it defines domestic violence from administration to administration, because it can vary depending on who's in control. There was a time when domestic violence, and that time was not too long ago, only included felonies and misdemeanors. That was what qualified as domestic violence. Currently, and let's thank the people in power now, whatever your political affiliation is. You know, we don't have a political affiliation here at WomenSV. We are non-partisan, apolitical. We're what the cause that we promote is love, peace, safety, freedom, and who can't get on board with that? But take a look at the Department of Justice definition of domestic violence now, and stay tuned, and let's see how and whether it changes over the next year. If you're watching this, it is winter of 2024. So stay tuned and let's see what happens, because right now domestic violence is, according to the Department of Justice, and the Office of Violence Against Women, domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another intimate partner. So, the next point is really key here. Domestic violence can be physical, it can be sexual, and that's what the typical person thinks of when they think of domestic violence. But look at what it also includes now. It also includes, according to the Department of Justice, emotional, economic, psychological, or technological actions, or threats of actions, or other patterns of coercive behavior. Look at that word, coercive behavior, that influence another person within an intimate partner relationship. And that's not to say you can't experience covert abuse or coercive control in other types of relationships. I'm looking forward to the day that we see that included If you're in a work situation where there's coercive control going on with your boss or supervisor or colleague or your professor or your neighbor, it can pop up in the most unlikely places. But we still need to figure out what to do about it beyond intimate partner relationships. So look at this next point. This includes any behaviors that intimidate, manipulate, humiliate, isolate, frighten, terrorize, coerce, threaten, blame. Now look, up until that point, there is no mention of physical action, fist to the face, broken bones, bruises, blood. Not there. Because you can turn someone into a prisoner in their own home through all of these other actions. And then it goes on to say any behaviors that hurt, injure, or wound someone. And one of the chairs of the Domestic Violence Council in Santa Clara County added, when I was talking to her, wound someone or someone she loves, or someone the victim of abuse or the survivor loves, because they will often injure a pet or a child, knowing that the most effective way to cause lasting pain, heartache, heartbreak, that will take years of effort to heal from, the best, most effective way to do that, the best form of torture from a covert abuser's point of view, or an overt abuser's point of view for that matter, is to go after the children or her pet. And when I say go after the children, it can range from trying to turn them against her, undermine the relationship between mother and child, all the way to killing the child. And I have one of my very dear advocates who experienced that very act and has dedicated her life since then to helping other survivors. And you may be aware that Gabby Petito's family has created a foundation to address domestic violence since the death of their daughter. Similar to One Love Foundation, founded by Yardley Love's parents, another beautiful young woman whose life was brought to an abrupt end by her boyfriend. So one of the best, most effective ways to heal from trauma, even if it's severe, is to find meaning in it in a way that can help others. Through helping others, you help yourself. So I guess altruism is actually a selfish act. There's Philosophy 101. Is it possible ever to be a true altruist? Because if you are deriving pleasure from helping someone, you're deriving pleasure. So maybe there's no such thing as a non-selfish act, but isn't that a great way to be selfish, to help others, because that's how you find fulfillment and enjoyment. And I'll tell you, the women that I work with, they are deep souls that are capable of tremendous empathy and compassion and this love, this abundance, overflowing of love. And that's the difference between them and their abuser. I'm not going to say people who abuse. If you abuse, you're an abuser. And you have a characteristic pattern of abuse, that makes you an abuser. But unfortunately, many of my survivors make the mistake of projecting their own qualities onto their partner, thinking at some point he's going to realize the pain that he's inflicting on her or on the children and see the error of his ways. And that's why she wants to take him to couples counseling to help him gain insight and recognize the harm that he's doing. But unfortunately, with this type of person we're talking about, they fall at the far end of the bell curve. They are the outliers, the out-and-out liars. If we think about the average person in the world. Can we be optimistic and say that most people would fall in the middle of that bell curve as far as integrity, honesty, being generally a good person, having a conscience, having empathy, having compassion, being able to do self-reflection, learn from mistakes, and want to do better and be better? Can we say that most people are trying to get it right most of the time, but because we're flawed, because we're imperfect, because we're human, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have patterns of behavior that need to be addressed. And if we're willing to do self-reflection and get help for that, male or female, or non-binary, anything in between, from no matter what gender you are, what your sexual orientation is, you can find help and healing and recovery if you're a perpetrator willing to do the hard work. You know, abuse is a learned behavior, but so is love, and so is the ability to demonstrate love in a healthy way. It can be learned no matter how old you are, because of, thank God, for the neuroplasticity of the brain. We can always form new connections and learn. You can teach an old dog new tricks. Ruff, ruff. I'm living proof that I'm learning ways to deal with my own trauma in ways that I never dreamed possible. Finding things like brain spotting, EMDR, other like somatic work, something called primordial movement, in addition to cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's all kinds of treatments out there. And oh my gosh, I love the whole how do you say that? Smorgasbord or smorgasbord? With my dyslexia reversal problem, I'll never get it right. But you know what I'm talking about. In the cafeteria therapy, if you're recovering from abuse, there's so many different treatment modalities to choose from. And how wonderful if you could find a trauma-informed therapist who understands covert abuse and coercive control and personality disorders, and people that are unwilling to change and enjoy causing you pain and suffering. That's how they get their kicks. Sick as that may sound, it's not mental illness. It's not the inability to discern right from wrong, fantasy from reality. It's a type of character. It's a type of personality that thrives on inflicting pain and suffering, especially on the very people that they should be protecting. And they may say, I love you, but we have to look at what love is, not just a word, but an action and a set of behaviors. And any behaviors that include intimidating, manipulating, humiliating, isolating, frightening, terrorizing, coercing, threatening, blaming, hurting, injuring, or wounding someone that you supposedly love, that is not love. That is turning love into a 4-letter word. Coercive control covers a broad range of behaviors, everything from gaslighting to strangulation, non-fatal, near-fatal, and fatal, and everything in between. It is a liberty crime. Evan Stark wrote the book on coercive control. He literally wrote the book on coercive control. The subtitle is How Men Entrap Women in Personal Life. This micromanagement around daily activities and traditionally female tasks especially. Have you seen the remake of the movie The Stepford Wives? That's a shot from it. So, I just noticed this on the shopping cart. Is that I'm wondering about, well, I don't know what that is, but my imagination is seeing it as a face of domestic violence survivor, an ad or PSA about it. I don't know. But coercive control is a lethality risk right up there with owning a gun and ending the relationship. Owning a gun in itself is not a lethality risk, but you couple it with abuse and then it becomes a lethality risk. And even with, if there's been a history of strangulation, even with, there's so many mass shootings that have been happening over the last years. Many mass shooters have been found to have a history of domestic violence, including strangulation. And that's not to say that because somebody has committed domestic violence and strangulation that they're going to go out and be a mass shooter. But if you have a lineup of like seven suspects, if you're rounding up the usual suspects, you might want to take a closer look at the one that has a history of domestic violence, including strangulation. It also increases risks to first responders, law enforcement officers that are responding to a domestic violence scene or incident. It's like their least favorite call to respond to because things can go sideways very fast. But especially if there's a history of strangulation in the relationship, it puts the police officer more at risk. There was a study done that showed that a police officer is more at risk of being killed, wounded or killed in responding to a domestic violence call if the perpetrator of domestic violence has a history of strangling his partner. So, Evan Stark calls coercive control a liberty crime because it violates a citizen's fundamental human right to have peace and safety and freedom in their home, in their personal life. It actually spills out into their life outside the home too, with a survivor over time feeling there's no safe place for her. He will call her at work. One of my ladies, when she got this new job, her husband started showing up to eat lunch with her and making her extend her lunch break and doing it every day to the point where she ended up getting laid off. So work wasn't safe for her. Another one of my survivors, she was forced to FaceTime her partner all the way to work during lunch, all the way home, just to make sure she wasn't, messing around with somebody other than him. That intense jealousy and suspicion and ownership, sense of owning the partner, that's what makes coercive control a lethality risk. Because what is the ultimate right of property? Possession, disposal. The right to dispose of it when it no longer serves your purpose is deemed to be useless or becoming a problem. So I also call coercive control the ultimate form of identity theft because it steals you away from who you were before getting into this kind of relationship. Robs you of your freedom, your happiness, your independence, your financial self-sufficiency, your creativity often, your sense of who you were before becoming involved with this kind of person. It puts your very identity at risk as pieces of you get eroded and erased over time. It's hard to recognize, hard to prove, hard to get protection around, even with the law being on the books in family court in California now, because it's not like what we saw in the picture of Rihanna. It's not like you have a black eye to show for what happened to you, or if hands were put on your throat, you don't always have bruises on the throat to show for it. Even if you have a hoarse voice and you're starting to look a little dazed or disoriented, they could think, oh, you've been drinking too much or you're on drugs, when in fact you've suffered traumatic brain injury, even without external signs of injury. So without an isolated, discrete, discrete, discrete event, one moment in time, without that snapshot indicating that something of a dangerous, threatening nature has occurred, it can be hard to prove, and therefore it's important to be able to establish the pattern. It's a pattern of behavior, and that's where keeping a journal, a secret journal that he doesn't have any knowledge about, can be very helpful, because then she can start to build a case that there's been this pattern of financial abuse, emotional abuse, technological abuse, reproductive coercion, forcing her to get an abortion, or this practice called stealthing, removing a condom in the middle of sex, poking holes in it, tricking her into getting pregnant. So there's so many things that can be weaponized in this type of relationship, but to prove it is hard, and that's why it's important to establish a pattern of threatening, isolating, controlling behavior. So, what does in-your-face coercive control look like? Here's some things that have been said to my survivors over the years. I love you so much. If you ever leave me, I will hunt you down and kill you. It's a pretty overt threat. Or, if you leave me, I will tell all your friends how crazy you are. Put this app on your phone. Add me to Find My Friends so I know where you are. Tell me all your passwords. Give me your phone. I want to know all your passwords. No, you're not going to spend a weekend with your friends. Or, no, you can't have any friends of the opposite sex on any of your social media. No, you can't have access to the joint bank account. In fact, I'm cutting you off. If you want money, come to me. When I call you, you better pick up by the second ring. That's, it's pretty obvious that there's a threatening situation going on here. It could be a fist to the face, which is pretty obvious, or, a hand on the throat, or a knife. It could be a death threat. I'm going to run you over with my truck this afternoon. It could be a little less obvious, the fist to the wall, punching the wall, conveying the message that first the wall, and then if you don't shape up, you're next. Sometimes they even injure themselves, whack themselves. Another signal that, yeah, it's me now, but maybe later it's going to be you if you don't watch out. If I can hurt me, for sure I can hurt you. What's harder to get at is the covert abuse, where there's that element of strategic thinking and calculating and cunning that goes into the control. The gaslighting. So she's working on her computer and she's getting this weird feeling that some of her emails look like they've been tampered with or marked as read when she didn't read them. And so he's coming into the room and she's on the computer and she goes, "Have you been reading my emails?" And he looks very offended and he goes, "I never touched your computer." And he's so offended and appalled by that in his expression and what he says. She goes, "Oh, okay, well, maybe not. Maybe I'm just imagining. Maybe I did open it." And what she doesn't realize is that he didn't have to touch her computer because he's been accessing her emails remotely. Or he didn't touch her computer. He touched her cell phone, and he's been using her cell phone to read her messages, holding it up to her face while she's sleeping with the facial recognition to unlock the phone so he can get at her messages. So it's not just what they say, it's what they don't say. They often tell the truth, but not the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's how tricky they are. That's why paying attention to language is so important. That's where my English major comes in handy. Or here, let me install that software for you. Doesn't that sound helpful? Especially if he's an IT expert and she's an artist, right? That is not interested in technology at all. And in a partnership, it's supposed to be, let's both of us pull the wagon here. Let's, like sometimes it's, you make the money, I'll raise the kids and make the meals, and we'll figure it out as we go along, or we'll take turns doing that. That's what partnership is. So if he's a good guy, that's great. But what if he is a covert abuser? And he wasn't just installing that software, but other software where he could be logging, keystroke logging software, where even if she changes her passwords going forward, he's going, "Oh, that's her new password." So, or this. Okay, so he goes away on a business trip, or she goes away, and they're separated for a while, and he goes, "Hey, I love you so much, baby. I really, really miss you. Do you love me? Oh, I love it when you say you love me. Hey, can you prove it? Can you just, give me some reassurance here, because I'm really missing you. I'm really missing you. Can you send me a picture? You know what I mean, like one that shows me how much you love me." He didn't say, "Send me a naked picture," but she got the message. And what happens if she does? Is he going to use that and hold that over her head to blackmail her? The whole revenge porn thing, the intimate and the non-consensual intimate image that may have been consensual at the time, but now he's weaponizing that against her. Or then, gradually planting seeds in her head. Do you really think you're ready to try out for that team? If they're in, high school together, you really think you're ready to, go for that job or that promotion? If they're, boyfriend, girlfriend, or married couple. Or how about this one? You don't want to see me mad. He's not going to tell her what he's going to do. But, she can tell by the look in the eye sometimes. I often have women that talk about the look in their partner's eyes when they, our ladies, have crossed the line in some way in their partner's minds. They see something change in the eyes. A darkness bleeds into their eyes. Or there's a feeling of like emptiness, like the soul has left the building. Many of them use religious language. It's like it looked demonic, diabolical. It's like he would look possessed, like satanic even, like that. Real darkness is in there. So somebody says, you don't want to see me mad, you have no idea what I'm capable of, and there's a look or some kind of physical body language, the tensed, the clenched fists, or that look, or the tone. They convey so much by the tone. Or she sees them do something like trip their little, the 4-year-old because he's always crying too much, and then she tries to call him out on it, and he goes, I would never do that. He tripped. Clumsy guy, he tripped. I would never do. I would watch for that use of the conditional. I would never do that, or I would never say that when he starts to gaslight you, and you think he said something insulting or demeaning to you and used a certain word, and then he goes on this 5-minute monologue, and by the end of it he's saying, no, I didn't actually use that word, I used this other word, you just misheard me, you misinterpreted, and you know how you are, you've that's happened. Okay, and he's defining how you are. He's defining and making you see what he wants you to see, making you hear what he wants you to hear. He's defining your reality, redefining it. That's not how it happened. And then he'll go into his thing and tell you how it really happened. Or you might want to consider talking to someone when she's getting really upset with them, or something has changed in the way she's reacting towards him, because she's starting to understand what's happening, thinking that she's starting to understand, but then he's starting to put it back on her and say, well, you've been under a lot of stress lately, maybe you should talk to somebody. He's showing concern for her mental health, and she has been under a lot of stress. But why? Because she's dealing with this as yet unnamed force that is damaging her ability to remember and to process and to think clearly. Or this is a little more obvious, but still not something that could usually call the police over. Right? Every time you cross the line in his mind, he takes out his gun and starts cleaning it. You get the message. Or the road rage. And it could be just, going a little faster than normal. And kind of taking it out on the car. But can she realize at some point that he has turned the car into a lethal weapon, and he's using it to intimidate her? Anything in the hands of a covert abuser can become a weapon, even a car, especially a car. What's it all about? What's it all about, Alfie? Remember that, if you're as old as I am, that song. What's it all about? Power and control. The abuse of power in order to control an intimate partner. Wherever there is an imbalance of power, look for the abuse of that power. You know that old saying, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's always that temptation. Remember, even Jesus was tempted in the desert. Look at this land, says Satan or Lucifer. You can have all this land if you just come to the dark side. We have cookies. But he resists that temptation. But as somebody is moving up in the world and gaining more power, authority, fame, fortune, social status, these things can go to your head. Look at childhood stars, what happens to a lot of them. A lot of them start to think the world revolves around them. They start to treat other people like objects. Not all of them, and many of them maintain that kindness, that humility. Anybody old enough to remember Jimmy Stewart, one of my heroes? Beautiful soul, a really genuine, beautiful soul. So you can become successful and still maintain your integrity. But if you have a tendency in the direction of abusing power, just wait till you get a whole bunch of it and see what happens. And to the people that are unlucky enough to fall within your orbit. So if we look at the inside of this power and control wheel, if you haven't seen this yet, take a look at it. Go just Google Duluth model, Duluth. That's where it came out of, Duluth, Minnesota, the show me state. It was created by this incredible individual, domestic violence advocate by the name of Ellen Pence. And there's been so many power and control wheels since. We'll look at another one in a little bit. But with this particular power and control wheel, it's starting to get at some aspects of coercive control. If we look inside the wheel here, you see what the circumference is of this particular wheel that describes a typical batterer. There is physical abuse or sexual abuse. There's the fist to the face. There's the hand on the throat. There's and it may only ever happen once for it to ever be hanging in the air as a possible threat forever after. But with coercive control, it doesn't always come with physical violence. As we saw from the last slide, you can turn somebody into a prisoner in their own home without ever lifting a finger to them. Sometimes you can punch a wall and get the message across through words, through gaslighting. We'll talk about that later, but through veiled threats, through consequences that don't carry forensic evidence with them. She stays out too late one night with her friends, comes home and finds the front door locked and deadbolted from the inside. And as much as she might try to call and contact her partner, he's not picking up. That's her punishment. She's sleeping in the car that night because she's just too ashamed to call her friend and tell her friends that she's been locked out again. That's her punishment when she doesn't stick to the curfew. And often her punishment when she dares to try to hang out with anyone other than him. And why? Because isolation is one of their tactics. They don't want their partner getting any help, support, or reality check from friends or allies. The more she's isolated, the better he can control her. The more I can control you with, my dear, the more I isolate you, the more I can control you. Yeah, it's like Little Red Riding Hood. And if we approach relationships with this innocent attitude, giving people the benefit of the doubt, everybody can look bright and shiny when you first meet them. Anybody can act nice on a date, and especially when you're meeting people on the internet. Man, it's buyer beware, big time. Because you can present yourself like this shining star. And dating apps, they don't do background checks. So how do you know you're not dating Ted Bundy? He went to college. He worked a helpline, I think, for a while. And I think it was a suicide prevention line. So, and he was very charming and also very good at playing the victim. Remember that scene riffing on Ted Bundy, the scene in Silence of the Lambs with the guy that's on crutches with his cast, or was he on? Did he have a cast? I forget. But asking that young unsuspecting lady for help. Watch out for you as a survivor, your empathy, your kindness, your compassion, Because remember what I said, anything in the hands of a covert abuser can become a weapon. Even your empathy. You feel sorry for someone. They are very good at acting the victim. You go to help them. And that's when the trapdoor closes. So abusing authority, that's one way of representing it. Often you'll see also male privilege, using male privilege, acting like the king of the castle in the home and turning her into an indentured servant. Well, not even indentured, because indentured implies that you can earn your freedom over time. It's more like a form of human trafficking, involving things like force, fraud, and coercion, elements in common with human trafficking. And he may try to turn her into a Stepford wife. A lot of micromanagement and regulation around traditionally female tasks, like how she does the dishes, how she folds the laundry, how she vacuums the carpet, or how she walks the dog. Like there can be such tight control around these things that she's every time she takes a step, she wonders if she's done something wrong, and that's how she ends up walking, sleeping, living on eggshells. Financial abuse, huge in the population that I serve. And of course, financial abuse, like all of these things I'm talking about, anybody, regardless of what the income level is, whether you are earning, $5,000 a year or $500,000 a year, there can still be financial abuse and all these other things going on. But remember what I said, the more money, power, status, influence you have, the more tools you have at your disposal to exercise this power, to abuse it in order to control your intimate partner. So financial abuse, huge, where she may not even have access to any kind of joint bank account. If she became a stay-at-home mom, sacrificed her career to serve his, he may put her on an allowance, dole out money, and make her beg for any purchases she wants to make that don't fit the regular regime or routine of groceries or filling prescriptions or clothes for the kids. So he may be running up debt that she doesn't even know about. He may not even let her sign the income tax. He may sign for her. And he may not even tell her how much he's making. Especially if he owns his own company. So he's a CEO. How easy is that to cook the books and make it look like he's earning much less than he is? So pretending that the money, getting money and then pretending it came from another source, or turning it into some kind of gift or inheritance that he got from his mother. What would you call that in the business world? Like if you've got two people that enter into a business partnership together, there is this usually explicit agreement that both parties will act in good faith towards one another. It's called this relationship of fiduciary trust. And what happens when that trust is broken, when one person, a business partner, betrays the trust of the other by siphoning off money or trying to make it look like it came from another source that it really came from? What do you call that? Embezzlement? Money laundering? What do you call that when it happens in an intimate partner relationship? Do we have a word for it even? When I put this scenario out to the audiences that I do trainings for, what do I get back? Oh, what do you call it? A bad marriage. So something else to think about is that when you leave. When you escape from a covert abuser, because you don't leave this type of relationship, you escape. Prisoners don't leave, prisoners of war don't leave their barracks, their cell. They escape. And they don't inform the prison guard of what their plans are. But when you escape from this type of relationship, hold on to your hats, because that's when the danger level really spikes. It spikes for the first 2 years after escaping from this type of relationship. In fact, over 70% of domestic violence incidents happen after the relationship ends. And that's when she's at higher risk of getting killed, and sometimes without any prior history of physical domestic violence, without any prior report, a police report made about physical domestic violence. She can still end up dead afterwards. That's one extreme, but covert abuse can range from making her demise look like suicide, self-inflicted, making it look like an accident, or getting into her head and just forcing her over time to just give up on life altogether. I don't call these things suicide. I call that murder, but without leaving any forensic evidence behind. But this type of retribution, weaponizing a woman against herself, this type of retribution can range from the things I just described to other ways to destroy her, so that physically she's still on the planet, but she has nothing left in every other aspect of her life. So they will often accuse her of the very things that they have been doing during the relationship. So if he's been siphoning off money from the joint community assets, it's community assets if you live in California. Not all states are like that, but she is entitled to share in any of the income that her partners made after they got married, and including if he started a business after they got married. Now, I'm not giving legal or financial advice here, but please check it out with your financial advisor. But often these guys, they see any money that they make, or even that she makes in the course of the relationship, as his. And when the relationship ends, and if she's getting her fair share, or not even her fair share, but if there's a settlement that happens afterwards, he will often perceive that as money that has been stolen from him. Because this type of person tends to see life and relationships as a zero-sum game. It's very transactional. What have you done for me lately? I did this for you, you better do this for me. You have a win, that must mean I have a loss. You got money, that must mean it was stolen from me. So, and they will often accuse their partner of the very thing they have done, including things like whatever the marital equivalent is of money laundering or embezzlement, or pretending that money that came from their income actually came from another source. And they'll get away with it. And that's the other frustrating and heartbreaking part of being a victim, a crime victim of this type of liberty crime, this type of abuse, is it's so hard to prove. It's so hard to gather forensic evidence around, because they're so good at covering their tracks. They are consummate chess players. They are very good at thinking several moves ahead. And they thrive in settings like courtroom drama. They love to cause drama and trauma. They thrive on that. They can't be happy if you're happy. There again, life is a zero-sum game. You're happy. What happened to you in the relationship if you were ever happy, or bouncing around, or had some great achievement or accomplishment, or something lucky that happened to you? Did he ever try to burst that bubble, one-up you, or punish you in some way for daring to try to be the center of attention for a moment? Yeah, it doesn't work in this type of relationship. He must be the center, the focus, the sun around which you, the lowly planet, revolve. So, in fact, I often say that if women are from Venus and men are from Mars, this type of individual is from Pluto, which is not even a real planet. They are way far out there. And there's a whole different set of rules that applies. It's a different set of expectations. With you, if you see a child added to the family as this welcome extension that has been brought into your life to bring you more joy. Because why? There's plenty of love to go around. That is looking at love as this infinite resource. There will always be more love that you're capable of. You have one child or 20. In the old days, they had 20. Oh my gosh. But there was always more love, because love done right is infinite. Look to God for the ultimate role model of that, right? But love done wrong is finite. There's only so much of it to go around, and it must all be directed towards Him. He must be the center of your universe 24/7. And that's why you'll often see abuse begin when a woman gets pregnant. And in more overt types of domestic violence, where there's physical violence, he may even attack her in her most vulnerable area, the most vulnerable area of her body now, her belly, her womb. That's where that new life is growing. But to him, it's not a welcome addition to the family. It's competition for attention that should be dedicated to him. And now there's this interloper, this trespasser coming along, and he will resent her for inflicting this new burden on him. And he'll be thinking things like, well, if I didn't have a kid, I'd be able to afford so much more. This kid is going to suck the money out of me. Again, life is a zero-sum game. This kid is going to suck my spouse's attention away from me. This kid is going to be nothing but a drain on me, and there's going to be hell to pay for that. So, sadly, tragically, shockingly, a leading cause of death in pregnant women is her partner. So let's still acknowledge that most men are wonderful, and most men see, even if they get a little bit nervous or scared about their, the first time having their first child, they still welcome that child as an extension of their love, because these are men who have that same view that you do, that there's lots of love to go around. But it's time to start thinking from a very different perspective, not projecting your values onto your partner or your ex, because that's going to get you into trouble. Start to think about how he sees the world, because that's going to help you better protect yourself from him going forward. And in new relationships, don't start off giving people the benefit of the doubt. Have them earn your trust. Be careful how much information you reveal, disclose, and make sure you're continuing to do safety planning. And when you enter a new relationship, it would be good to share as much as you feel comfortable with somebody that you're starting to trust and who has earned your trust. But it would be, I think it's an obligation on your part to let them know something of your past, because with this type of abuser, it's not just you at risk going forward, it's anybody that you form a connection with, because they will often go after that person to hurt you, to discredit you, to undermine your relationship with them. So you, my lovelies, you are the creator. In the person, the being, the entity that you are fleeing from, protecting yourself from, wanting to, in the process of having just escaped from. That is the destroyer. Two opposite sets of values, where you're about abundance of love, creation, intimacy, connection, warmth, getting closer. He will punish you for trying to get too close. He will punish you for trying to get away. In, out, in, out. Maybe how many times did he ever threaten to leave you? Divorce you? Why didn't he? Does he have abandonment issues? Oh, poor little boy, poor baby. Let's feel sorry. Or, no, let's not feel sorry. Let's feel compassion for whatever suffering he experienced as a child, while recognizing he's not a child anymore. We put away childish things when we are no longer children. So let's hold him accountable for his behavior now as an adult. Because at some point he came to a crossroads in his life. Remember, abuse is a learned behavior. And there are 3 different roads you can go down. And one is becoming a perpetrator yourself. If you saw the way dad treated mom, or mom treated dad, or the way they treated each other, you can become a perpetrator yourself. There's a higher risk of that, growing up in that kind of environment. There's a risk of you growing up to get involved with somebody that abuses you. Feel sort of, familiar in some way. You feel drawn to it, to maybe rewrite history. Maybe this time you can get it right. But there's a 3rd road you can go down. And that's where you learn from negative example. And you decide that you're going to have even more compassion for the people that you get involved with because of the suffering that you experience. You don't want anybody to ever have that same kind of suffering happen to them. So that's where we get social workers and therapists and physicians and police officers that, and even attorneys, that judges who are in it for the right reasons. That's where many of them come from, backgrounds where they saw injustice or heartache or pain or abuse, but they came to that crossroads and they decided, I'm going to use what I learned to help others, not hurt others. Oh yeah, we say hurt people, that old saying, but we also say hurt people, help people once they heal from that hurt. That's where you get a trauma-informed therapist and you work through whatever crap happened to you growing up, and then you develop the ability to do self-reflection and to feel any remorse for any harm you've caused anybody else, and to be able to think that you want to do better and be better as you grow and find new ways of dealing with stress and anger and anxiety. You don't have to take it out on other people. You can take a beat before responding. And you don't have to project all your horrible feelings onto others, and behaviors onto others, and try to make other people believe that your partner is the true perpetrator here and you're the innocent victim. You don't have to play those games. You don't have to go through life with that mask, pretending that you're this good, fine, upstanding man or woman, but really you're hiding the monster behind the mask. You don't have to do that. You can make a choice to be better than what you grew up with, to be better than what you saw. That power lies in your hands. But whenever there's an imbalance in power going forward, a lot of abusers who grow up in this type of family, they think to themselves, I will never again feel as powerless as I did when I was a kid. It's a jungle out there. It was a jungle in here. It's kill or be killed. I'm going to be the dominant one, the alpha male or female. I'm going to be the victor, not the victim, from now on. And they develop that hard shell, that hardness, and it covers up whatever shame they had, feeling that they didn't deserve to live because there was something so horribly wrong with them. That's what one or the other partner made them feel like, and they're not going to go there, because to look at that would kill them, that would crush them. So they've got to make you the bad guy. So let's not spend any more time thinking about their poor traumatic history, because as I said, you don't want to get stuck in that, why does he do that? Because that's gonna take you back to the past and think that maybe you can do something about it in the present. He may be an alcoholic. He may be into, abusing prescription medication. He may be bipolar. He may be suffering from anxiety or depression or his own PTSD. He may have all those things, but there are plenty of good people, good characters, who suffer from all of those different things, addictions and mental health issues. And they're still good people. But we're talking about character aside from any of these other things going on in their life. So don't think, in most cases, don't think, if only he'll get treatment for his alcohol or drug addiction or his porn addiction, things will be better. And I have a hard time, I tell you, coming to terms with this whole notion of porn addiction. It's like, you poor fellow. It's like this is a disease, and maybe with treatment you can be cured of this. And let me have empathy and compassion for you when you're struggling with this this horrible affliction. That's not how I look at it. I'm not a therapist, so I'm not going to look at it that way. I'm a domestic violence advocate focused on safety and education. And when I see survivors whose partners are looking at pictures of young women, sometimes even, women of any age, and getting off on the horrible things that are being done to them, I see a perpetrator that thrives on being a voyeur, peering into subversion and abuse, because so many women are trafficked in this way. So let's have empathy and compassion for these women who are engaging in this kind of dramatized sex act, but let's also really address the damage that's being done to a man's worldview, to a man's view of women, in going down that dark, diseased rabbit hole of pornography. It's one thing for a couple who love each other to watch, some kind of show that's, erotic and getting some ideas that they both have fun with in the bedroom. As long as there's mutual, enthusiastic, ongoing consent, it's all good. Who am I to judge? Who are we or anybody to judge? If they're happy, I'm happy. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the type of man that watches this kind of stuff. That's what you do to a woman. That's what you can do. That's how you can really get off. That's how you can really feel like you've got the power of life and death over her, that you're holding that in your hands with your hand on her throat. Wow, what a kick that will be. Let me try that. Let me try squeezing and see how long I can do it before she passes out. Isn't that horrifying to even think that somebody would think that way? But this is the type of individual we're talking about, the type of person that enjoys watching others suffer, that enjoys witnessing this type of suffering, this type of abuse, but also gets a kick out of inflicting it on others. So that's what young kids are getting exposed to when they get a cell phone. What the heck? How old are they now? 9, 10, 11, getting a cell phone without proper parental controls on it, and parents are busy, and especially if you're going through a divorce or you've been a victim of this type of abuse, you're just trying to keep yourself sane and get food on the table and earn money and keep a roof over your head. Even if your husband was a doctor or a therapist or a CEO and had lots of money, chances are, if you've escaped from this type of relationship, you're struggling to pay the bills. And he's living, as they say, the life of Riley. How does he get away with that? How does there seem to be one set of rules for the rich and another for everyone else? So parents can be distracted. Single moms can be distracted. And you may not know what your little one is watching after the lights go out and he's supposed to be asleep. Teaching children how to view women. Remember, just be aware of how malleable a child's brain is when it's forming. We like to talk about the neuroplasticity of the brain. That's the good news, folks. When I was growing up, back in my day, they used to say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but that's been proven to be wrong. Ruff, ruff. I am an old dog and I am learning new tricks almost every day. And that's because of the neuroplasticity of my brain. Thank you very much. How lucky, how fortunate we all are that we're always capable of forming new neural pathways in our brain. Fabulous, isn't it? The neuroplasticity of the brain, power of the brain. So let's always sort of continue to keep that hope alive, that no matter what damage, what trauma we've experienced in our life, with the proper application of self-reflection and outside help, we can heal, we can recover. But number one is keeping ourselves safe and our children safe from all kinds of outside threats, but also the kinds of threats that come in under our own roof, ones that we may not even be aware of, and that's pornography brought in via that portal that takes you to other worlds, sucks you in through the internet. So, yeah, pornography. In the hands of an abuser, he's already set up to see his partner as a possession, as a resource, as an object, and now as a sex object, wanting to experiment and try different things in the bedroom. And just because it happens in the bedroom doesn't mean it's not abuse, and especially if it's a hand on the throat, doesn't mean it's not attempted murder. And Casey Gwinn, incredible, magnificent Casey Gwinn, district attorney who started the country's first family justice center, started it in San Diego, has said that you cannot consent to a life-threatening act, even if it happens in the bedroom. So let's keep that in mind, because why am I kind of dwelling on this? Because this type of abuse, hand on the throat, squeezing, and sometimes taking her in and out of consciousness even, that type of abuse doesn't always end up with external signs of injury. And a victim of this type of crime, this type of abuse, even if it happens in bed, can end up with life-threatening injuries for days, weeks, months, even years afterwards, even if there has been no sign of external injury. And that's why Casey Gwinn and Gail Strack and the Alliance for Hope, the Strangulation Prevention Training Institute, why they're going around the country educating therapists and physicians and police officers and everybody that will listen about the impact of strangulation. When somebody puts their hand on your throat, they are raising their hand and saying, "I'm a killer. I've got your life." There goes the hand again, raising that hand. And they are saying that I have the power of life and death over you, and I can choose to end your life anytime I want. So he's after even one act of putting his hand on your throat, he is 750% more likely to end up killing you, and over 1,000% more likely to end up killing you if it's happened more than once. So don't ever see it as sex play. Don't ever see it as a way of proving that you're a good sport. See it as what it is, attempted murder. Hard as it may be to prove. As one attorney told me, in a different county, thank God, but still, the poor people that live in that county, when one of my survivors from that different county talked about being raped while pregnant by her husband, the comment he made was, "That's going to be very difficult to prove without witnesses." What the heck? Another book you might want to check out is Know My Name, K-N-O-W, My Name, by Chanel Miller. So why do so many women end up, even if they started off saying they were willing to testify or go to court, why do they so often end up going sideways, as they say, or becoming reluctant or hostile witnesses, refusing to testify? Because so many of them fear ending up dead. And there's many ways to destroy a woman, sometimes physically, but sometimes her career, her profession, her ability to earn an income, her social connections, many ways to take revenge. So please don't ever ask, why did you stay if it was so bad? Why didn't you get out? Please ask her, how did you ever get the courage to leave? How did you ever get the courage to escape? And not all of them make it out. I lost one of my dear survivors last year. Was married for 30 years And her husband worked carefully over time to turn their children against her, to undermine her relationship with them. She grew up in a time where you did stay at home and sacrifice your own ambition to promote your husband's. And she was very spiritual, and she, with her spiritual conviction, she believed that you make your bed, you lie in it, you stay in it. And she was proud, and she was ashamed, and she didn't want to air her dirty laundry. And she watched over the years and decades as her children were turned against her by her husband. He never lifted a hand to her, he never swore at her or raised his voice to her. He knew ways to get under her skin, to promise to do things and not do them, to give her the silent treatment for days, weeks at a time, to set up an expectation that something would happen and then it would not happen at the last minute, to find ways like locking her out of the house accidentally, or having things go wrong that she could never prove it was him who was doing these things, to undermine her, to rattle her, to intimidate her, to control her, because he was so adept, so smooth, and he was always so charming with the children. So when he would keep her up all night, explaining in this monotone how useless she was, how she would never make it in the world without him, how she'd be a bag lady, she'd be homeless, she'd be nothing, she'd be dead if she ever tried to leave. She had no money, no access to the joint account. She would listen to this talk all night, unable to escape because he would follow her from room to room. Oh, there was that time she called 911, but there was no physical evidence to show for it. She ended up spending the night in a locked unit because she was so distraught, but was not able to express how he was slowly killing her from the inside out. There was no blood, no broken bones, no bruises. All the damage was internal. And after 30 years, he broke her heart. And she died, literally, of a broken heart. So never underestimate the power of the covert abuser to do damage, up to and including death. I was a teacher before becoming a domestic violence advocate. Go back far enough, I was an English literature major. And how funny how the threads of your life that seem to be all over the place get woven together in a pattern that makes sense over the years. Because I am so finely attuned to language, I am able to help survivors begin to connect the dots, read between the lines, and start to intuit the hidden messages, the innuendo, the double entendre that is underneath a lot of what they're saying and what they're not saying. With covert abuse, it's not just what they say, it's what they don't say that matters. As in the case of one of our one survivor of murder, suicide, what meant the most to her in all the world was her child. And let's call that child Billy, to protect her confidentiality. But going through her divorce, she told her husband, you can have everything, just let me have Billy, their 3-year-old child. And he had never raised a hand to her in the course of their their marriage. He had, the worst he'd done was put a fist to the wall. So there was no documented, recorded, or observed history of physical domestic violence. But after she told her husband, just let me have Billy, you can have everything else, he started to taunt her, to threaten her, to say to her, when I'm gonna get out of Dodge, I'm gonna leave you high and dry, I'm gonna get out of here and go to Mexico, and when I go to Mexico, I'm gonna take Billy with me. And he would say that over and over again, and then he started to refine it, to vary it, to say, when I go, I'm going to take Billy. When I go, I'm going to take Billy with me. And she was the one who found them. He did go, and he took Billy with him. A 3-year-old child taken from her by her partner, ending her child's life and then his own. And what better way to inflict lifelong pain and punishment on an intimate partner than by robbing her of what means the most to her in her life. So in our enlightened age that we live in, we like to talk about trauma and the trauma response, and we don't really talk about evil. But when we're getting into an act like this, inflicting this kind of pain and punishment on someone, what would you call it? Dysfunction? Abuse? I have no other word for it but evil. And because I'm a woman of faith, I see every day the good in the world. And I've worked with some good men over the years as well, who were survivors of abuse at the hands of their gay partner, and sometimes their female partner. My expertise is in working with women, as I said. But there is a being that walks amongst us with all the appearance of a regular human, but where the heart should be, where the soul should be, there's an abyss which needs to be filled. It's an infinite abyss, and over their lifespan they will continue to try to fill that infinite hole where the soul should be with finite things. More toys, more cars, more weapons, more money, more power, more social status, more degrees, more letters after their name, more houses, more property, more. And why do they keep wanting more and more and more? Because it's a hole that can never be filled. That's the problem with the covert abuser that walks amongst us like a regular person. Nietzsche said, be careful about staring into the abyss, because looking into the abyss stares back at you. And he warned, be careful in fighting monsters that you don't become a monster yourself. So, just to take that detour very briefly back to childhood for a moment with this type of individual. In growing up with one or the other or both parents a monster, what happened to this individual? What did they become? They become the thing they feared, the thing they wanted to flee from and couldn't if they were a child, the thing they hated. They have become that thing. And through our history and our civilization, you'll see that being played out across the world. So if you are butting up against this kind of evil, you don't take evil to couples counseling. You don't take evil to individual therapy, because it's just going to reinforce their worldview that they're the victim, you are the problem. They don't do well with the truth. They don't do well with confrontation. One of my ladies, she suspected her husband was having an affair with another man. And when she saw the picture proving it and showed it to her husband, confronting him, he put his hands on her throat and squeezed, and she nearly died that night. And he said to her, "Why are you making me do this?" They do not do well with the truth. They do not do well with confrontation. They will punish you for unmasking them, for discovering for the truth of who they are. You have committed the unpardonable sin of recognizing the monster beneath the mask, and you will be punished for it. What's that Warren Zevon song? And when you're up against something like this, send money, guns, and lawyers. Right? It's not about let's work to heal this relationship. No, let's work to keep you safe and your children safe. The less contact you have with an individual like this, imagine taking Ted Bundy to couples counseling. What the heck? What's the difference between a serial killer and a covert abuser? Most serial killers tend to get caught. So, with teens, this power and control wheel, an added element for teens is that peer pressure. And of course, we're social creatures, and we worry when we grow up about being isolated from our extended family and friends and colleagues because of the damage that's been done by our ex trying to poison the waters and make them think that we are crazy, we have mental health issues, we are suicidal, we are corrupt, we are abusive, we are lying about our experience. They will go out of their way to turn everybody you know against you as an adult, but as a teen, that can really do a number on your heart, on your soul, on your spirit, on your wanting to live. Because so much of their identity is wrapped up in who they are in their social circle. So again, the covert abuser, even as a young man, in some cases a young woman, they go after points of vulnerability. That's that Machiavellian aspect to them. You know Machiavelli, who wrote The Prince. He talked about one of the leadership principles of an effective leader was to have that appearance of honesty out in public, because all the better to hide your dark deeds behind closed doors. But also that Machiavellian principle of being opportunistic and exploiting your opponents, not just their weaknesses, but their strengths. So they are highly manipulative, highly cunning, and they have a way with words. Anything in the hands of a covert abuser can become a weapon, even and especially words. Words become weapons. The war of words. Something else that keeps women and men and non-binary people of any gender in a relationship like this is that pattern that emerges. So please keep changing the pronouns as you see fit as I go on, because otherwise we'll be here until midnight if I'm saying that, making that qualification with every story I tell. And I'm Irish. I'll tell more stories. I can't help it. But just change the pronouns as you see fit, please. But what many survivors will see in the course of their relationship is there'll be times when he's being nice. And that's the honeymoon period, or at least when he's not calling her names, swearing at her, or making her feel like she doesn't deserve to live. When that's happening, that period of peace, but that in fact is actually when she will usually meet someone like this in the honeymoon phase, the hearts and flowers phase, where he's on his best behavior and things are rosy. But over time, she may start to sense that there's a tension building in the relationship. Has she said something, done something, like inadvertently that hurt his feelings? Has she disagreed with him? Has she gotten angry at him for something, or expressed hurt about something that he's done? Has she been other than perfectly pleasant? Is there a change in the atmosphere No, he's not taken out a gun and pointed it at her. No, he's not said, I'm going to run over you with my truck this afternoon. No. But you know how you can walk into a room and sense if there's tension in the air? No doubt, if you are listening to this, you are probably an empath, somebody that is very empathetic, and you pick up on these subtle cues of the mood of a room. So did you find yourself, after having said something or experienced something or having done something, did you find that shift of atmosphere in the room? And then at some point after that, did you experience some kind of explosion, calling you names, or setting you up to fail in some way, sabotaging you, or was it a physical or sexual attack? You will often see a pattern emerge where there is this cycle, this periods of peace, tension mounting, explosion, and then back to periods of peace. It's almost like, oh, got that off my chest, I'm fine, what's wrong with you? When this type of person goes back to the honeymoon phase, the hearts and flowers, or where he's acting like a human being again, the risk then is raising false hope in her that he'll go back to being the person she fell in love with, that she was first attracted to. There'll be flickers of that same person that she will see, and that will fan the flames of her hope. But unfortunately, if he fits the profile, the typical covert abuser, that is false hope. And I've often said that this type of false hope has killed more women than cancer. You can die from this kind of false hope, because he's nice for a while. She quits her job. She moves to another state. She gives up the degree she was studying for. She has another child, all out of hope that things will be better, things will be different this time. But if she starts to keep a secret journal, a private journal that he doesn't have access to, she will begin to see over time this pattern emerge. And sometimes you see the cycle where there's, peace, tension building, explosion, peace, tension building, explosion. But it doesn't always follow that pattern. There could be peace, explosion, with nothing in between. She might just say, they might be having a perfectly innocent conversation, and then she'll mention, I think my laptop or my computer has a virus on it. Do you think you'd be able to help me take a look at it? Or she said something went wrong. She asked him for help. 2 no-nos in this type of relationship, and that's when he may turn on her and start to become very verbally abusive to her and call her all sorts of names and tell her how useless she is. Can't even fix, X, Y, or Z. So it could go from pleasant to explosion in a heartbeat. Or it could be miserable. He could be miserable all the time. There can be no periods of peace. It can be random. It can any one of these patterns can come into play. But what happens over time is ending up walking on eggshells, because you don't know when the other shoe is going to drop on your head. You don't know what's going to set him off. And why is the dinner that you serve him tonight and that he likes, next week you serve the same dinner and he throws it on the floor? What's going on there? That kind of crazy making behavior where it's making you think, maybe if I try this, he'll go back to being the man I married. Maybe if I try that, maybe if I get the kids to bed sooner, maybe if Susie gets an A on her report card, or maybe if I wear more makeup or less makeup, gain a little weight or lose a little weight, or dress a little sexier, or watch out for however I'm dressing. Like, she's starting to think, especially if she's intelligent and a problem solver and a fixer, she thinks there's something that she can do that's going to make him go back into this period of peace. He'll be that man she remembers. But here's what she doesn't understand yet, and here is the horrifying epiphany She must have, if she's going to begin to address this relationship with any kind of effectiveness going forward, she must come to the recognition, the awareness that this is not a problem she can solve. She didn't cause it. She can't cure it. She can't fix it. She can't change it. It's not her problem. It's his problem. It's who he is. It's his character. Oh, it's not a few bad attitudes or behaviors that could be worked on with couples counseling. No. And has she tested that out? Has she ever pointed out something he did that hurt her feelings or hurt her? And how did he respond? Did he blow it off? Did he project it back on her? Did he say, oh, okay, I won't do it again? And then did he do it again? More likely he punished her for daring to speak up about something that he'd done. Because he's perfect. She's the problem. He must always be perfect. And as long as life is perfect, things will be fine. But life is not perfect. And she's going to make a mistake. And then he's going to, get a wild hair across his you-know-what after, something happened at work. And he's going to look for a punching bag. That old kick the dog when you come home. He's going to kick the dog. Whoever is the dog at the moment. Is it the child? Is it her? What kind of life is that? Starting to live like that. And you don't see the signs early on because they're so good at, wearing that mask. But even if she does see what's going on, how does she come to terms with the fact that it's happening to her? Was she a doctor before? Was she a therapist? Was she a faith leader? Was she a CEO? Was she accomplished? Was she powerful and successful, educated and doing all the right things? Because when you grow up in middle to upper income area, you're kind of taught that you're going to get good grades, you're going to go to a good college, you're going to find, settle down with somebody that's also got a good career, and you're going to keep climbing that a ladder of success in your nice little home, your nice little neighborhood, and it's just going to keep getting better and better. That's the ladder of success in the more affluent areas. But what part of abuse fits any of that picture? Failure is not an option. In this type of environment, with this type of culture, with its own set of expectations and rules and pressures and taboos. We don't air our dirty laundry when we come from a nice home. It's not supposed to happen here. It happens on the other side of town, the wrong side of town, but not here, not to me. And I'm a problem solver. I'm a fixer. I can fix this. No, you can't. No, there's no tooth fairy. No, Santa Claus may exist, in some realm. No about the Easter Bunny. No about fixing this problem. It's a myth that abuse doesn't happen in nicer neighborhoods. We're just better at hiding it here. Who's this picture of? That was Dr. Martin McNeil. Remember the Netflix series that was made about him? That's his beautiful wife. And these are his 8 beautiful children. Dr. Martin McNeil, physician, attorney, bishop in his local church, found guilty of causing the death of his wife, pumping her full of drugs. He had bragged to a mistress at some point that he could end somebody's life and make it look like they died from natural causes. Eventually he was found guilty, and ended up committing suicide in prison. My dad was a doctor, and he was a wonderful man, and I have great respect for doctors who are good men. But as in any and every profession, there are some bad apples. And if you, as a physician, have the power of life and death in your hands, the first oath you swear is first to do no harm. And that's the oath they violate. And it's happened to many of my survivors who have been involved with abusive husbands who have an MD after their name. Somebody called it the M deity after their name. And with one of my survivors going through divorce, she was asked by her husband why he didn't, she was asked by her attorney during their divorce why she didn't let him go after more of what she was entitled to in the property settlement phase of the divorce. He said, I could get so much more for you than what you're asking for. She was still living with her husband while going through the divorce. And why? Because she'd been under such tight financial control, financial abuse. He'd cut her off in every way. But when the attorney asked her, why don't you let me fight harder to get a fairer settlement for you? You know what she said to him? She said, because the other night over dinner, you know what he told me very casually? He said, just like it was cocktail party conversation, did you know there's more than 40 ways to kill a woman and make it look like she died from natural causes? I serve on the domestic violence death review team. I am very aware of the ultimate act of domestic violence. I asked the coroner about this comment that my survivor had made about what her husband had said. Is it possible? Are there that many ways to end somebody's life and make it look like they died from natural causes? And she said yes. And I also ran another story by her, which she validated. And this was another woman married to a physician who would threaten to end her life regularly. He would torture her psychologically by saying to her, this is the physician talking to his wife, you know how I'm going to kill you? I'm going to inject you with a poisonous solution between your toes in a way that not even the coroner will think to look at. And he would, here's how he would, another one, how this other physician would threaten to discipline their daughter by saying, I'm going to slice you open with my scalpel if you don't behave. How could you ever think of that as discipline? Psychological torture in the hands of a brilliant abuser with letters after his name. Just because somebody has letters after their name doesn't mean they're a good person. And it doesn't always mean they know what they're doing either. You know, you can have a PhD after your name and be a practicing therapist for 30 years and have no idea what covert abuse is all about. You're still seeing it as a communication issue. More and more therapists are getting training in this, but still not enough. So every provider in every field needs to be well-versed in covert abuse and coercive control, because on the planet, 1 in 3 women will be raped or severely beaten during her lifetime. That's according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 3 women. But that's not even beginning to get at the more subtle forms of abuse that don't get reported to hospitals, police departments, or domestic violence shelter-based agencies. The providers that keep the statistics. What's going on behind closed doors in terms of emotional, financial, legal, technological, spiritual abuse that doesn't get reported, but that can still damage entire families and be life-threatening and life-ending nonetheless. Getting into this type of relationship, it's such a slippery slope. But over time, we can recognize, often in hindsight, sadly, that even the early stages were part of the control, were part of the abuse. The grooming behavior, the love bombing, the showering her with gifts and affection, and checking in with her and saying things like, "Oh gosh, you're the smartest woman I've ever met, and you're so much more sane than my crazy ex-wife," and oh, you know, she used to, you wouldn't believe the things that she would do to me. She went after me with a hanger one night, and, you know, like, "Mommy Dearest, that was my wife," you know, and she ended up getting a restraining order against me. And it's so hard for me to even talk about this because there was such shame. I was a victim of this type of abuse, and it was so hard for me. But it's taken me a long time to begin to trust again. But I feel like I can trust you. You're so beautiful, and you're so perfect, and you are the woman of my dreams. I've been waiting for you my whole life. Like, who wouldn't get swept off their feet with that kind of talk, and even sort of inserting the whole idea that, oh, maybe he had a restraining order against him in the past, but that was his crazy ex-wife, flipping it around and making her the perpetrator. Like, there are cases where a woman has a restraining order against her for good reason, and there are women I've had to disinvite from my group who had restraining orders against them for what it turned out to be good reason, because they were unsafe people and making other women in my group feel unsafe. And I have women in my support group who do have restraining orders against them, and they've been framed and set up by their partners. And how do I know the difference? As a domestic violence advocate, I take people as they present. I have statistics on my side, though, since about 90% of domestic violence survivors are female. And even the remaining percent, depending on where you read the statistic, 85 to 95%, but the remaining 5 or 10% who are men, most of them are victims of their male partners, but they can also be victims of their female partners. But let's go back to the focus and where the majority of domestic violence happens, to women. So I have statistics on my side, as I and physicians and attorneys and faith leaders take people as they present. When a woman tells me that, every now and again I get fooled, very rarely these days, but I think I've turned maybe a dozen people away over the past 12 years, and I know it has come back to haunt me, is cyber harassment and the cyber bullying and the smear campaign. Yes, that comes with the territory. I knew this would happen, but thank God I have my strong village around me to protect me. So that's just again to acknowledge that that women can be perpetrators. Even women can be perpetrators of abuse. And so the grooming behavior that happens in the beginning, that where they're bright and shiny and tipping the waiter $50, or making these grand public displays of affection, and checking in, and to say, oh, hey, I was thinking about you, I'm missing you, I had such a nice time with you last night, you are such an amazing person, really I'm excited getting to know you, and like bunches of these texts coming in, and it can turn a girl's head when you get that kind of attention and affection. And if it's been a while, if you grew up in a home where your parents didn't treat you well, one or the other of them, you can be more vulnerable to getting into this type of relationship. But I have many women who've grown up in happy homes with parents that treated each other with respect, and with their children, treated their children with respect as well, and they still end up in this type of relationship because of the grooming and the love bombing that happens in the beginning, the charm, the charisma. So many of our ladies talk about how charming he was. Charming. Think about God's right-hand angel, Lucifer, right? He was the morning star, the brightest, shiniest, most beautiful angel in all the heavens. And what happened to him? Got a little too proud, a little too obsessed with power, right? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupted Lucifer, absolutely. And then he got kicked out of heaven. But he was bright and shiny, beautiful, the beautiful morning star. And these, this type of covert abuser, they're not always beautiful, but many of them are very attractive. And they are successful, and they're upwardly mobile. And sometimes they're in between jobs, and then she ends up being the breadwinner, and he sort of mooches off her financially for years and sometimes decades. But very often she ends up being financially abused by somebody like this, who's taking away her financial independence and every other aspect of her independence. But that the honeymoon stage that she first meets somebody in, that's where she's vulnerable. If she comes from an unhappy home, or a home where there was abuse, if she comes from a happy home, because he's so charming. But also, what else makes her vulnerable? Her own position in life, stage in life, or what's happening in her life at the moment. Has she had a loss recently? Did she lose a parent or a sibling? Did she move to a new town? Did she lose a job? Has she been very ill? Did she get COVID big time? And, is there something in her life that happened that is making her vulnerable at this moment? That can set her up, because these guys are predators and they can smell vulnerability a mile away. It's like sharks smelling blood in the water. So also her strengths, is she very successful, and is she confident and lively and full of animation and humor and light? That's going to be the trophy bride that he's going to go after. And then they work over time to pick away at all those lovely qualities. And let's say she's a math genius and excels in a highly technical field, or a computer scientist with a PhD in it. Is he starting over time to cast doubt on her ability, making her question how competent she really is, or is she really ready to go for that job offer or promotion? Starting to question her memory or her ability to process intense loads of information. If her intellect is her prized possession, he'll go after that and chip away at it. If, let's say, she's a writer, and over time, does he start to make her question her ability to even put a sentence together? Because he starts first with a little suggestion here for a word change, or maybe a paragraph change, or maybe a topic change, but it's incremental. Because of that, the slippery nature of it, she may not even be aware of what's happening to her. That checking in over time could very well become stalking, and he says he's texting her, how come it took you so long to answer my text? Or pick up the phone. Why aren't you picking up the phone? What are you doing? Who are you talking to? Who was that guy I saw you talking with at the party the other day? Or over time, the checking in and the questions become more like interrogation and pressure that's put on her, and maybe she feels so much pressure if she's hanging out with anybody other than him. She starts to withdraw from these social invitations, and sometimes her friends may think, oh well, she's in love, and when you fall in love, you kind of fall off the social map for a while. It's like she's so wrapped up in him. But she herself and her friends may not be aware of what's really happening, that he's wanting to get more and more control over her by isolating her from outside sources of support. Has she ever caught him briefly in the early stages of the relationship with the mask slipping just a little bit? Let's say, for example, road rage. Did somebody cut him off in traffic, and did he tailgate that person, or swear at them for the next half hour? Has she seen glimpses of that temper that so far, thankfully, he hasn't used against her? And is she starting to think, well, maybe if he's got an anger issue, maybe that can be addressed over time? But watch out, even in if she's been married to this guy for years, and then she realized that he's a covert abuser, and goes through the court process, and maybe she's even successful getting a restraining order against him on the basis of coercive control, which you can do now in California, thanks to Family Code 6320. But the judge may end up sending him to anger management. I've got the hiccups because I'm talking too much, or breathing too much air. The judge, well, what else am I going to breathe? So the judge may end up sentencing him to anger management classes. But the key is, and if the judge is not trauma-informed on what covert abuse looks like, he's going to mistake anger for control. It's not an anger issue in this case. It's a control issue. And there's no classes on control management. learning how to handle your tendency to abuse power in order to control another person because it's ingrained in your character. There aren't classes in that because when we're talking about this type of character, it's a character issue, and it's set in stone with these people. I've worked with over 1,400 women now, and I've yet to have one of them come back and say, he's a changed man, it's all better. Hasn't happened yet. I will keep hope alive that, there's still hope for some of these folks. But when we're talking about with people with a personality that lacks empathy, remorse, self-reflection, lies easily and often even when they don't need to, that is good at playing the victim, talks a good game, glib, superficial charm, enjoys causing pain and suffering to the people they should be protecting the most. What do you call that? I don't call that someone that can be healed over time and see the error of his ways. Generally not. Someone you protect yourself from. So teasing. Let's watch out for teasing. There's teasing where friends get together and there's that sort of jovial joking around with one another, but it comes from a foundation of love and trust. The way siblings might tease one another, and if it's done from that same kind of heart-centered position of love. But there's another type of teasing, and that's the kind of teasing that he'll make some kind of comment about her to make fun of her cooking or what she's wearing or something about her in front of other people in a way that elevates him by putting her down and getting a laugh at her expense. So she slaves all day over a stove making dinner for guests, and then after the first bite he goes, wow, when did we get Betty Crocker in here? Or, oh gosh, I haven't had a meal like this I don't know, since the day you got me to marry you, who knew you could cook like this? Did you actually cook like this? Did you actually cook? Or, boy, we got to have guests over more often if I'm eating like a king tonight. So there are lots of different ways he can make these sort of, backhanded comments that are meant to just make fun of her, to undermine her position of equality in the relationship, and by getting a laugh at her expense, and getting others to join in with him around laughing at her, not with her. Like the first type of teasing I was talking about, you're laughing with each other. Now, you're laughing with somebody. Here, you're laughing at somebody. And God forbid you should ever do that to him. Because, it was Margaret Atwood who said, what are men most afraid of? Getting laughed at. And what are women most afraid of? Getting killed. In this type of situation, getting a laugh at your partner's expense, that kind of teasing, there's a forensic psychologist by the name of Reid Meloy, R-E-I-D, Meloy, M-E-L-O-Y, PhD forensic psychologist with expertise in psychopathy. And he says this type of teasing is a socially acceptable form of sadism. Why? Because it's deriving suffering. Why? Because it's deriving pleasure from witnessing or causing the suffering of another. So that's when you're going down the dark disease rabbit hole and you want to get out as quietly and quickly as you can. Because no matter what kind of superwoman you are, this is your kryptonite. And the longer you're exposed to it, even if it's like this invisible form of abuse with no broken bones or bruises to show for it, it will kill you slowly. Over time, it's going to chip away at who you are, your very identity. The silent treatment is one way to hurt somebody, to really hurt them, by treating them like they don't exist, even to the point of brushing by her in the hall as if, without acknowledging that he's, bumped into her. She asks a question, ignores it, like, no, there's nobody talking here. And he may just communicate for days, weeks, months, if he has to, via text. There's the weaponization of the text messages, right? It used to be this source of love, comfort to her, built her up, and now she's dreading that next text. What's he going to accuse her of this time? Anything in the hands of an abuser can become a weapon. Words, cell phones, text messaging. That sort of drawing an X through her as a human being. She's not important. She doesn't matter. She doesn't exist. That kind of treatment can go on for days, weeks, months, sometimes even years. And I call it silent violence. There's a reason why you put prisoners, like when they're in prison, in solitary confinement, right? There's a reason why the Amish use banishment as that terrible form. And back in the old days, in the Old Testament, the same. Because we are social creatures. There's a reason why, we punish kids by putting them in a timeout, separating them from other people. And, later, when you put them in jail, that's a big timeout. So we are social creatures. That's where we get our serotonin and our not our Oxycontin, our oxytocin, and our serotonin and our serendipity. All kinds of other Sarahs, wonderful things happen to us. Wonderful chemicals course through our body when we have a feeling of connection with our loved ones, and that gets shut down when we're in this type of relationship. That's why so many women end up with anxiety and depression. Emotional abuse is physical abuse. It breaks your heart. It breaks your spirit. It breaks your mind. I have women who thought they were going crazy over the years. You can drive a sane person crazy through sleep deprivation, isolation, gaslighting, getting inside her head, trying to convince her that she didn't really hear what she thought she heard, didn't really see what she thought she saw. It didn't happen like that. I would never do that. That's that sort of Svengali, Rasputin, boa constrictor in the Mowgli, in Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. That hypnotic gaze wrapping itself around you. Till before you know it, you don't realize it, but you're being slowly stifled to death. And then there can be the veiled threats, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. There can be overt ones and veiled ones, where she gets the message. And then he can start to plant seeds in your social circle and your network and even your business connections, starting to express some kind of concern for your mental health, or start to try to imply that you're the abuser and he's the long-suffering partner that's trying to figure out his wife, and he's now on this sort of borderline Facebook support group for partners of people with borderline personality or bipolar. If he's taken any classes in therapy or become a therapist himself and you're going to couples counseling, he might get to the therapist first. And within 5 or 10 minutes into the appointment, the therapist is giving your husband a knowing look and even jotting down notes. Yeah, I think it's bipolar. Yeah, that's just what he thought. I think that's what it is. Or, borderline. Now she's going to come into the session maybe beside herself, distraught or upset or cold, or it's not going to be safe for her to talk about what's really going on in the relationship. She'll be punished for it later. And he may have set her up just before that appointment. He may have taken like ages to get, to even get out the door, and she's worried about being late. Or he may have picked a fight that morning. He may how how this is such a waste of time, because she's so messed up. It'll take years to even figure out what's going on with her, and she's such a victim of her own childhood wounds. She should maybe even be taking going to a residential treatment center to get at what's going on with her, because God knows things are getting worse with her. Maybe there's a hormone issue going on with her. He'll just go on and on like that, like wearing her down, being so corrosive and demeaning and diminishing that by the time she gets to the appointment, she's got this look on her face and she's not ready to open up, and she's closed off. And then he starts to express how wounded he is that they can't be intimate in the bedroom anymore. And he's not going to say that it's because he did terrible things to her in the bedroom and that's why she doesn't want to be intimate anymore. So how can you want to be intimate with somebody that has threatened you and humiliated you, shamed you, and terrified you? It's not compatible with a good time in the bedroom. But the therapist isn't going to know that. The therapist is going to look at the surface of the iceberg, and see this poor, suffering husband and this disturbed partner who's clearly got some issues. So planting seeds, she's the problem, or she's the corrupt one. She's the one stealing money from me. She's the one that was abusive towards me. She's the alcoholic. Often they will draw on what's going on with them because it's easier for them to remember their lies. And then they're very good at telling these stories and repeating them over and over and over again. And that old saying, even a lie spoken often enough begins to sound like the truth. So they're very good at that, at gaslighting everybody else now, and including the court system too, because they present so well and they're so good at impression management. And then possibly even beginning while you're in the relationship, and then certainly escalating after you're out. That's when they go full bore, many of them, into the smear campaign and do everything they can to discredit you, to make people think you're either crazy or making things up or you're corrupt. So that's why part of the safety planning with a covert abuser is building your village, gathering your allies, getting, hopefully, some therapy from a trauma-informed therapist, not to go back into your childhood. If you're in this relationship, to help you shore up your inner reserves, your courage, your perseverance, your centered and focused ability to take a beat before responding, and to begin to plan your next move, to think strategically, not shooting from the hip or being in reactive mode, but starting to identify the tactics that are being used on you, and then what can you do in response to them in a way that's going to be strategic, carefully planned, not reactive, but proactive, thinking like the chess player. And you may feel so beaten down and so small, and you may feel like the mouse and he's the cat. But just because you're not the cat doesn't mean you can't begin to think like a cat. And did you know that we share 90% of our DNA with the big cat, with the leopard? So can you start to think like the leopard, who can be very social and loving when the occasion warrants? They cuddle, they snuggle, they play, but they also know how to wait and watch, and then pounce, make their move when the time is right. Wait, watch, plan, then jump. Wait, watch, plan, jump. That's the mindset to get your head into, rather than the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. We move from fight, flight, freeze, fawn into figure it out. Start figuring it out, and then do your research. Start planning. Be observant. In fact, be the little ducky on the water. Yeah, you're leopard, you're also part duck. I don't know how much DNA we share with the duck, but can you be a duck for a moment, metaphorically speaking? And be that duck on the water, on the pond of a still lake on a quiet Saturday morning, and even put an imaginary GoPro camera on your forehead, filming everything, so that on the surface, everything looks like business as usual. Because if you let yourself get poked, provoked, prodded, once he figures out you want to leave, he could very easily set you up and make you look like the perpetrator, get you arrested, kicked out of the house, restraining order against you, you lose custody of your kids, boom, boom, boom. The dominoes fall because he's carefully, strategically planned how to frame you. So can you be that duck on the water, GoPro camera on your forehead and your little feet underneath the surface, taking you in the direction you want to go? That's your planning, your research that he doesn't have to know about. And don't start feeling guilty about not sharing your plans or your feelings with him. He's torn up that card. Didn't you at some point try to tell him he was hurting you? Didn't you ask for change? At some point in your relationship, did you ever point out to him something he did that hurt you? And how did he respond? Didn't he do more of it? Didn't he punish you for bringing it up? Didn't he blame it on you? What did he do in response? Did he stop? Did he become a better person because he wanted to please you? And he held the relationship in higher regard than he did his own selfish needs and pleasure. I think you've seen what's happened in the past when you've asked for change. And over time, as you lose more and more of your power and independence through possibly giving up your career, staying home to raise the kids, and losing access to financial resources, the more power that has been taken away from you, the more power he's gaining over you, and the worse the abuse tends to get over time. So when you have become a prisoner, you don't start sharing your plans with the prison guard. You don't say, hey, you know what, I'm planning to escape while you're on that business trip. Or you don't say, hey, I know California's a community property state. I know you've been fooling around with another woman or another man. Here's a picture. I know I deserve 50% of the community assets. And I've done some research, and I've got an attorney, and I'm going to file file for divorce. And if you threaten me, I'm going to file a restraining order. I'm going to call the police. Oh my gosh, a dozen cats she just let out of the bag with what she said there. Watch out for your inclination to lay your cards on the table. Now it's time to have the poker face, to keep a few aces up your sleeve. Don't let them know what you're planning, because the stakes are high. You could lose everything. So poker, Lady Gaga, poker face, do the poker face. Be the duck on the water, and recognize that you are not being sneaky. He's sneaky. You are not being sneaky. You're being strategic. And you have to be in order to plan your escape. So, watch out for one of his other tactics, which would be, as I said, to accuse you of the very things he's been doing. And it's happened so often. There's an acronym for it. DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. Make you the bad guy and blame you for something that he did. It happens very often. Like I said, it makes it easier for them to remember their lies if they just remember what they did and say you did it.